everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and here on my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to give you my top 3 tips or advice that you can use, that I use in every single mix to help you have just a more professional with sounding mix that has more clarity, that just overall just sounds more polished and more finished, okay? So we're going to do that right now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you like what you see in this video, and also go out to mixingmadeeasy.net, which is a new mixing membership training website I have, mixingmadeeasy.net. Description is, or link is in the description box below. So here we are in Studio One. Okay, so there are a lot of tips I can give you, right? But these are 3 things that I do in every single mix, and I want you to try them out for yourself. So tip number 1 is we're going to talk about phase correction, especially on drums, okay? So first of all, I want to just solo up a drum bus here for us so we have some drums we can listen to. Basic little drum beat, nothing too fancy, okay? So what I use here is I use a plugin called Audioline to do phase correction. Now, there are very few plugins that I tell students and followers, because there's so many plugins, right? You could jump into the plugin abyss, and everyone's telling you got to buy the next plugin, which is the magic bullet to fixing your mixing and making it sound like a radio hit. And that's not the case. It's how you use the plugins. But there's very few plugins that I say that you really should strongly consider having, and this happens to be one of them. Audioline by SoundRadix is a phase correction plugin. Now, there are others that are on the market. I've used a couple of the others, and I tend to like this one. They don't sponsor this video in any way, just to let you know that I've been using this for years. This is great for when you're working with live recorded drums, and that you want to have be able to check phase and correct phase. So having drums that are aligned or in phase are going to give you a more beefy, more thick, more lively drum sound, where when things are wildly out of phase, things are going to sound thin and a little lifeless. So let me demonstrate. And I also have an entire video on how to use this in detail on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. So here's our drum sound. Okay, and we have Audioline as the first plugin across all these drums. Okay, now I'm just going to take away Audioline in the middle of this drum loop here, and you can hear the difference. Listen for the low end of the kick and the snare in particular. Okay, here's with the phase correction. Without phase correction. Okay, so you can hear the bottom of the kick drum gets a lot more thick. The low end of the snare gets a lot more thick, a little bit more beefy as well. And that's what phase correction is going to do. Now, depending on how the drum kit was recorded, this will be more or less audible. This is pretty average, what we have going on here, but sometimes it makes even a much bigger difference. Now, again, I'm not going to show you in detail how to use Audioline. That would be a much longer video. There is one on my YouTube channel, as I mentioned. I'll put the link in the description box below as well. But Audioline, or some kind of a phase correction tool, something you want to do in every single mix. Get on your drums, do your Audioline or your phase correction. That's going to help you get a more lively, punchier drum sound. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is something that I talk to my students about an awful lot. And again, this is going to vary on every mix a little bit, but the tip is, in general terms, manage your mid-range. So one of the things that I find when I'm working with different projects, and again, every project will be a little different. This one is a little bit more subtle. Whenever you have a mix that has lots of guitar tracks, whether it be acoustic electric, or if you have horns and keyboards, and you have obviously overheads and tom mics, or sometimes you have all 3 of those things in your mix, where maybe you'll have multiple guitar tracks and you have a drum kit, obviously, and then you have a horn section. They're all going to kind of have that kind of mid-range buildup between about that 300 and about 500, 600 hertz. And what that's going to do, it's going to cloud up your mix. It's going to cloud up the low end. It's going to cloud the top end. It's going to kind of have more of a hollow, maybe somewhat of a nasally type of feel. Now, this particular mix doesn't have all those particular instruments. We have a guitar, we have keyboards, we have drums. But you can also do this on your master bus. A little tip is the last plugin on your master bus is you could go ahead and you could put just any old EQ here, and you can get rid of some of that mid-range. So let me go ahead and let me just play back a section of this song again, and let me kind of show you what I mean. So here is the last plugin on my master bus where I've taken out about 381 hertz. I took out about 3.5 dB.
You make it hard, I wanna stop and stare. Behind those eyes, what else you got in there?
Okay, so one tip you can use is you can go up and you can do some EQ, what I call EQ sweeping, where you come up here and you just kind of sweep around until it sounds its worst, where it really sounds that kind of hollow, kind of nastiness, and then you can just pull out a few dB.
You make me feel like I should learn to stop time.
Right there, okay? What's it, 353 or so? And then we can just pull it down. Now, you don't have to take out much when you're doing it on the master bus. I'm only gonna pull out just maybe 3 dB or so. It's not a very big cut here. Now, listen to the difference. So I'm gonna take it with the cut, and then I'll take away the cut. Listen to the vocal. Listen to the snare drum a little bit.
I will give you this life that I'm in.
4.
If you show me the other side, 'cause the girl's what I want. I'll stand outside in the rain, 'cause the girl's what I want. I'll take the physical pain, 'cause the girl's what I want. At the end of the day.
So just that little cut, hopefully you can hear it over YouTube, especially when the background vocals kick in. It tends to have like kind of a little bit of a nasally sound to a little bit of a mask, is what I kind of call it. Like there's a mask over the vocalist. This kind of cleans it up a little bit. Not only does it do that, it'll also give you the listener perceive that there's a little bit more high end, and the low end tends to sound like it's a little bit tighter as well. By taking out some of that mids, it's going to accentuate the highs and the lows just a little bit. And again, it's not a very big cut. Now, we did this on the master bus kind of when the mix is kind of done, but you can also do this, and I recommend that you do this on your instruments as you're going through each one of your tracks and you're EQing things. You want to try to do that as much as possible. If you have, again, overheads, or if you have, lots of guitars and horns, managing the mid-range, and again, it's usually between that 350 hertz and about 550, 600 hertz, using that same kind of sweeping technique on individual tracks and just cutting out about a dB or two on all those instruments that I kind of mentioned, the accumulative effect of that is going to make the overall mix have a little bit more clarity. And then in the end, if you still feel like you got a little bit too much cloudiness there, you could put something on the master bus like we just did, and you can clean that up as well. And that's a huge thing that I see from students whenever I get mixes and stuff that people send me. It's usually got way too much mid-range buildup, and then they go to compensate by boosting the highs and boosting the lows, and then everything kind of sounds out of whack. So cut some of that mid-range, get a little bit tighter bottom and top end, clean up the mix. It'll give you a lot more clarity and sound a little bit more polished, a little bit more finished, okay? So my last tip I'm going to show you for this video is something that I do a lot, and this is parallel compression. Now, we think about parallel compression on drums a lot of times. This is where people will usually do this, but I like to do it on all the groupings of instruments, and the concept being really simple. We have our busing system where all our groupings of instruments go to our regular buses. In this particular mix, we have a drum bus, a bass bus, electric guitars, a keyboard bus, and a vocal bus. Pretty small session. I also then copy and have the same amount of buses for parallel tracks, which are here in purple. So I have P drums, P standing for parallel compression, bass, guitar, keys, and vocals. And then what I do is, and we'll do the drums, we'll start with the drums because that's the most common, is we'll go ahead, we'll solo up our drums, okay? And then on each individual drum, you can see that I'm sending it pre-fader to the P drums or the parallel drum track, okay? All these are being done. Now, typically I just do the close mics. I don't normally do the overheads or the rooms. It's usually just the close mics, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna over compress these drums on this parallel track. And I'm just using 1176 here, but you can use anything. And let me show you how much compression we're actually using here. So right now you're only hearing the regular drums, and I just kind of turn this up, and I want to over compress this. So this is the parallel track on its own. Doesn't sound that great, but when I blend it in with the drums, and if I take it away, Okay, so that's the basic concept, but we want to go one step further. Not only do I do that on drums, I do it on bass, I do it on the guitars, I do it on the keyboards and on the vocals. I do it on everything. And the compressor that you use is really kind of irrelevant at this point. You can use really any compressor. I'll usually use different types of compressors to give me a little bit more tonal variation, but that's for another video. But just understand that instead of just compressing your drums or parallel compress your drums, parallel compress everything. Okay, and listen to what it does. Let me give you the full effect of what this does. So when you parallel compress everything, all your groupings of instruments, and just dial them up a little bit, keep them in volume lower than the original buses so you don't lose all the dynamics of the song. Listen to what it kind of does. So here's the piece of music with parallel compression, and then I'll mute all the tracks.
Ooh, make me feel like I should learn to stop time. I will give you this life that I'm in if you show me the other side. 'Cause the girl's what I want. Stand outside in the rain. 'Cause the girl's what I want. I'll take the physical pain. 'Cause the girl's what I want. At the end of the day, the girl's what I want.
Okay, so it doesn't really get louder, but what do you hear? You hear it get a little bit more thick on the bottom ends. You get a little bit more nice roundness on the bottom. The snare tends to cut through a little bit more. Things get to have a little bit more clarity, a little bit more punch. It sounds like the whole mix is a little bit more lively. And that's because we're just tucking in those overcompressed tracks underneath the other buses. So what that means is for the tracks, you know, the individual tracks, I'm doing a lot less compression, maybe just a couple of dB on every single track. So the song retains that really good feel, that dynamic, so the music kind of moves. And then we use the over compression tracks or the parallel tracks and tuck them in underneath. And the combination between those two will give your mix a lot more punch and a lot more clarity. And how much of the parallel tracks you use is really a personal taste thing. I tend to try to be really subtle because the goal is not to make the mix louder. Okay, it's to make it a little bit more lively with a little bit more punch. Okay, so parallel compression on not just your drums, but on all of your instruments can make a huge difference to the way the overall feel of your mix sounds. And if you want to know more in depth about parallel compression, you can go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and check out the course, The Power of Parallel Compression. It's a webinar I did in 2018, which will really help you dive down deep and really understand it and wrap your head around that. Okay, so check that out. I'll put the link in the description box below. So those are my top 3 tips for this week. You do these 3 tips in every one of your mixes, manage the mid-range, phase correct those drums, and work with parallel compression. It is going to take your mix to the next level for sure. So for more videos like these, please hit that subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell so that you know that I'm putting out new video. I usually put out a video once a week. Also go over to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and get your 5 free mixing training courses. It's my gift to you, worth about $110 just for signing up or looking over it at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And last but certainly not least, go check out mixingmadeeasy.net. If you want to learn the craft of mixing in a very non-technical and easy way, it's perfect for beginners and intermediates to mixing music. Go check out mixingmadeeasy.net. You'll really dig what I have going on over there. And until the next video, I will see you guys very soon. Take care.